Jiu Jitsu Crucible podcast. My name is Pat Cooligan. I am a 4th degree Renzo Gracie black belt, and I am here with longtime friend and associate André Porfirio, who is a black belt and has a long list of accolades. André, welcome to our first podcast.
Thanks so much, Pat. It's a pleasure to be here on the first episode, and I'm sure this podcast is gonna grow a lot. So I'm really happy to be on the beginning of it, and really excited to talk a little bit about my journey and also about our predictions at this next Worlds 2025.
So, guys, this podcast is going to be an evolution. It is going to be a work in progress, and one thing that I believe is speed and success are synonymous. They go together, and there's going to be a lot of improvements with this podcast. How old were you, André, in 2004?
2004, I was 7 years old.
So the reason I'm rushing to get this podcast out is because we are at the 2025 World Championship. And in 2004, that famous year that Roger broke Jacaré's arm, that was my first time at the World Championship, and I have been lucky enough to have been at every iteration since. So 22 years straight. That's one of the accolades that I'm very proud of. You were 7 years old. You fought at multiple World Championships. You have multiple world titles, and now we're going to be here. We're going to call it. But André, I'd like you to take 2 or 3 minutes and review the story of, your background, where you're from in Brazil, kind of growing up, and how you met me, and kind of bring us up to present day.
For sure. I'm from the coast of Brazil, in a city called Santos. The city is very famous because Pelé used to play on the soccer team over there, so made the city world famous. And after Pelé came Neymar and some other very famous players. I started Jiu-Jitsu as a 12 years old, who already had done karate, who already had done Muay Thai, but couldn't actually find myself in any of these martial arts. And one of my dad's goals was for me to don't be an overweight adult growing up. So he always wanted me to be in shape. So the first goal when he put me on the martial arts in Jiu-Jitsu was not actually to be a champion or anything, was just to don't gain too much weight and stay healthy, right? So I started 12 years old. With 3 months of training, I did my first competition. And since that moment, me and my dad, we fall in love with that. And he started to be crazy about and started to put me in every single tournament, every weekend. And then after 1 year, I used to live with my mom in Santos, and my dad used to live in São Paulo. So it was kind of far for him to come pick me up and then bring me to the tournament, sometimes in a bunch of different cities. And then after 1 year, he told me, come live with me, because here in São Paulo, we're going to have better gyms to train, and also going to be easier for me to move around with you and bring you to the tournaments. So in 2012, in December of 2012, I went to live with my dad. I was 13 years old. And he put me to train at Cicero Costa. The beginning was not very easy because my dad's house was kind of 1 hour and 45 minutes away from the gym. So at 13 years old, who never had to take a bus or anything in my life, I had to start to take one bus, subway, train, and then walk 25 minutes just to get to the gym, train hard, and then come back all the way back just by myself. Of course, with time, I made some friends there that would make the same way. But the beginning, when I didn't know anyone, was just me, myself, and just this dream and this will to train and to get better.
So how did you end up in the U.S.?
So in 2017, I remember I was at the gym training, and at Cicero was kind of like a jungle, didn't actually had no one taking care of the entrance or taking care of new students, because there was a social project and not very organized at the time. I'm sure now it's a little better, but at the time it was literally like a jungle. And then I saw this guy watching the training and kind of wanting to train, but not very sure, didn't know how to get there, right? So I went there and I spoke to this guy and say, oh, hello, my name's André. You need some help? It's like, oh, I would like to train. I'm like, man, here's the change room. You can change. If you need any help, let me know. You can drill with me as well. And then I did some drills with him after we roll. And then after the train, I told him, oh, we always go eat at this restaurant. If you want to come with us, you can come. And then after talking with this guy, he told me he had a gym in Canada. His name is Fernando Zulik, gringo. And he told me like, no, I have a gym in Canada. And I came here because I would like to bring some athletes to Canada to help my team, to grow on the competition side. And I know here you guys have a lot of good athletes. Then he even asked me like if I would like to go to Canada at that time. But at that time I had just opened my first gym, Balboa School, and I also was in college. So at the moment I was very busy, so I couldn't actually go. But I told him, no problem, but let's find a guy that you can bring, and will be someone that don't gonna create problems to you, and gonna be someone from your confidence and also from our confidence. So we spoke with Cicero, and then we finally found Fabrício Barbarotti, was the first guy who came to stay in Canada at Action Reaction. That nowadays are helping a lot of guys from Brazil and giving a lot of opportunities as well, just like Pat. And then, okay, he went, he had a good time with Fabrício. And then 1 year later, he called me again. He told me like, oh, André, man, I didn't forget about you, blah, blah, blah. You remember me, Fernando Zulik? I'm like, oh, I remember. And he's like, oh, I have a friend, he's Canadian, but he's going to open a gym in Orlando, and he's looking to an athlete like I did last year to bring, because he's bringing 2 Canadians, his students from Ottawa, to train over there. He needs someone to help them in training and to compete under the team as well. You'd like to have this opportunity. I know you had something going on over there, but I think could be a good opportunity for you. And then at the moment, I felt was the moment to go out of the country to move to US. And then I just told my dad. My dad like supported me from the beginning. And then I decided like, oh, so let's do it. So I had $50 on my pocket, and I just came. And then I finally met Pat. And then from there, we had a crazy story.
So did you know when you arrived at my gym in Orlando, it was in late April of 2017, I believe?
Yes. 2018.
2018. I'm sorry, 2018.
2018.
Did you know you were not going back to Brazil?
I had on my heart that was the mission. Like when I spoke with my dad before I come, like that was the mission. Like I couldn't go back. Like I just had one way, you know. Like I knew it that my life would have to be in US, and I would have to make things happen over here, and it would not be like someone that have like a family that is very organized, and then okay, if something happened, I can go back home because my dad and my mom gonna be there waiting for me. My life never been like this, you know, always being kind of disorganized. So I knew it, my path would have to be made by myself.
So, you know, we're not going to get into the whole sort of detail because, as you said, you know, our journey together is kind of long and maybe even a bit confusing. But, you know, the reality is now you're a green card holder. You're over halfway to becoming an American citizen. When you met me, I was a new green card holder. I now am an American. And, you know, I'm very excited to see you finish that journey, take your oath of allegiance and become an American. You know, it's something we've talked about before you return to Orlando. And, you know, I think that's a big goal that we both have for you. But, you know, we are here. We are in a beautiful hotel in Redondo Beach. We were both at the Pyramid today. And, you know, we're going to be there tomorrow. And we're going to be there throughout the weekend. So what I wanted to do is, like myself, you're a bit of a jiu-jitsu nerd. And you know yourself because you're surrounded by so many athletes. It's funny, there's so many coaches and athletes out there that really have very little or no knowledge beyond their like immediate ecosystem. You know, like, yes, they're kind of plugged into their student, or that student might be kind of plugged into their division. But, you know, I think one of the things that me and you have in common is, you know, recently we spent many hours together in a car, and we talk a lot about jiu-jitsu in all divisions. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the black belt division, starting with the ladies first.
Ladies first, always.
With everything. So we've got the adult rooster up. And, Andre, I don't think there's any doubt or there's not even much argument that, Maisa Bastos is the queen of that division. She's attempting for her 4th consecutive world title. When you look at that division, do you see anybody that you have any degree of confidence will beat her?
To be honest, no. But have some good girls that can always be an underdog that surprise us, right? I remember, I don't know if it was not this year, but last year, Maisa lost the Brasileiro finals to Jessica Carolina, that I'm sure is on this bracket. Let me just get a look here. And then also, besides Jessica Carolina, we have Ana Carolina that actually used to train with me at Fight Sport. She's been coming from the color belts, winning everything. It's very tough. Lavinia Barbosa just had a big win at the UFC Fight Pass, so she's coming strong. Was no gi, but her main thing are actually gi. We also have Jennifer Aquino. That is a very tough competition. She's, I think, seated number 3 on the bracket from Atos. Very tough girl. So if I would have to guess, I would say Maisa would come up with the title, but I don't think she's going to have an easy life on this division.
I would say, though, if Maisa was not crowned the champion, that would be one of the bigger upsets of the weekend.
I agree.
So moving up to light feather, one of the things that I'm really excited to see is we have newly promoted Mia Funegra. Her sister Ashley won the Brown Belt World Championship earlier this afternoon, and she was promoted to black belt after winning that. So we'll have both of these monsters in this division going forward. But, Mia has had this rapid ascension from blue to black belt in under 2 years. I don't think she's lost at adult. But you of all people know that black belt is a different beast.
Yes.
So where would you rate Mia as a brand new black belt who's never fought at black belt? We also have Shelby Murphy from AOJ. And I think, we've got, a lot of tough girls. What's your prediction for this division? Because we don't have a returning world champion.
We actually have, and the returning world champion, Amanda Monteiro Canuto, Jaime Canuto's wife, is actually her first round. So I think if she come up with this victory on the first round, she's going to be really, really strong and going to have a really big chance to get this gold, because Amanda is a very, very, very tough black belt. If I'm not wrong, 2018 world champion. And then she had 2 kids with Jaime. Now they are training a new wave. Even when I won there in 2023, that you put me there to stay 10 days over there, I was able to train with them. And they've been training under John Danaher. That is, of course, a master of our game. And Jessica Carolina, that I spoke about, that beat Marilla Maísa on the Brasileiros, is actually the number 1 seed at the light feather as well. That's a very tough girl. And
do you know this academy, Pax Jiu-Jitsu?
Not really. She used to be Nova União, but I think now she's in US on the Pax Jiu-Jitsu, but I don't actually know.
So it would seem like 3 of the top contenders, Amanda, Mia, and Jessica, are on the same side of the bracket.
Side. But we also have Brenda Larissa on the other side. Used to be under Melky Galvão, black belt under Melky. Used to be Hokage, wife. Brenda Larissa just won Brasileiros, and also Shelby on the other side that everyone knows. I'm sure like everyone's been following her, and she has a great jiu-jitsu as well.
So if you had a gun to your head, who do you have for the title?
I would say coming up strong, I would say Mia Funegra. Coming up strong, new black belt, hungry, first tournament on the belt. I would guess her. I really, really like the way she fights, and I feel she has the eye of the tiger and the anger to win.
And one thing I would say is, I think if you are one of the top coaches or top competitors or top teams. I find in jiu-jitsu that always tracks a little bit of hate or a little bit of envy. Whether you like Guy Mendez or you don't like Guy Mendez, he seems like a relatively polarizing figure. I don't think there's any doubt he knows his jiu-jitsu. No. I think he knows the jiu-jitsu of his athletes. And I don't think that Mia would be here if Guy did not have every confidence in her. And what I will say is, I think if Mia wins that first fight, I think there's a strong chance that that she would win. And you know, I'm a traditionalist at heart. I like it's not a common theme, but I think it's very heartwarming for me. And again, I know most people may not agree with me to see a closeout. It's a tall order, but it would be interesting to see if there is a closeout. Would Shelby get the nod as a senior black belt, or they give it to Mia? Because as popular as Shelby is, I think Mia is a superstar in the making, and I think that would be curious. But I think this will be in a very exciting division.
That would be a very, very exciting division, for sure.
So we're going to go over to the featherweight division. Okay, and in the featherweight division, the number 1 seed is Larissa Campos from AOJ.
Larissa Campos.
Then we have Maria Luisa from Almeida.
I think Maria and Cassia, I don't know if they're on the both sides, but they had the finals at Pan Am's. And I think this is going to be a crazy, crazy fight. Like, from all the black belts finals, I watch all men's and females black belt finals. This was on my top 3 favorite fights, because Cassia is so aggressive and has such a beautiful jiu-jitsu. And in the other side, Maria is so good with strategy. She comes from Almeida, that is like a school that built a lot of champions. Bianca Basilio came from there. Kleber Clandestino came from there. Leonardo Lara came from there. And like built so much good athletes, and they're really, really good in strategy. So going to be a really big battle between a jiu-jitsu that is so pretty to watch, so aggressive, with someone with a great strategy. So I'm pretty sure they're in different sides of the bracket, and I think this will be the finals.
So if you had to give the nod,
I would give to Cassia this time.
All right. So the next division will be the lightweight division at black belt, which, I mean, I didn't think Luisa Montero was going to fight. I was under the understanding she's retired.
Yeah, I saw that last year as well. She even left her belt on the mats, right?
Yes, and I mean, I was also, as coincidence would have it, I was at Atos immediately post Worlds, and it was reaffirmed at that time. But, you know, she is in the bracket. And then the question is, can Janina or, you know, Brienne from Montreal, fellow Canadian, I mean, I think it's hard to beat Luisa. But, you know, what are your thoughts when you look at the top 3-4 seeded girls?
To be honest, I think this year is the year of Janaína. She been winning everything. I'm not sure if she won Europeans, but I know she won Pan Am's and also Brazilian Nationals. She been in a row. And the only title that she's missing on her career is the world title. She already won all the other major titles. I'm not sure if she won the Europeans this year. Maybe yes. But I think that's the year for her. When you see someone coming strong like her, winning all the other tournaments in Pan Am's finals, she beat Luisa, so I'm sure she has this confidence. And looking to her, been watching her since purple belt, she has the desire. She wants a lot, and I'm sure she's coming strong to get this title this time.
So, you know, this could be a very strong weekend for the AOJ women. Because, you know, when we look at these divisions, you know, we've got Maisa, Shelby, Mia, you know, Janina. Let me ask you, because, you know, you've been, you know, a part of a couple different teams.
Yeah.
And it's a popular topic. And, you know, we have these guys that, you know, recruit people. So, for example, when you have a high-level practitioner. And, for example, Mia started as a child at AOJ. When did Janina go to AOJ?
I think she was already a black belt, but she's a black belt under her husband, Regis Lebre, and they used to represent Gracie Maita, but she always training under him. And when she went to AOJ, he just left Gracie Maita. His gym became only Regis Lebre, not AOJ as well. And now she trains at AOJ. I'm sure she also trains with her husband, of course. But she changed her team, but she didn't actually change her team at the same time.
So let me ask you a broad question, and it's a hard question. But like, for example, and we'll just use this, and it's not a knock on anybody, but at what point is somebody an AOJ product? Like, for example, someone close to home. Is Diego Pato an AOJ product?
I don't think so.
Is Pablo Lavaselli an AOJ product?
No.
So my question is, and it's not an easy question, but as a seasoned competitor, a guy that's fought in every major event that there is, when you're like making that call, like, what is it? Like, so for example, if you have a guy at a super high level, for example, and they leave and say they go to New Wave.
Right.
And, they've never had an ADCC title. They moved to New Wave, like Giancarlo Bodoni is a great example. Is he a New Wave product? Because he went there as a brown or black belt.
I think depends of the person. For example, Giancarlo with New Wave, I would put him as a New Wave product because most of his career before that was mostly in the gi with Lucas Lepre. And he went to black belt with Lucas, and then he went to teach at Bernardo schools. But even if you watch him, I fought with him on his beginning when he just moved to New Wave. And the fight I beat him, the fight I fought against him and I beat him, was not, the person I fought was not the same person that won 2 ADCC world titles. He changed it completely.
Not even remotely the same.
No, of course, like he still brings some techniques that he learned through his journey, of course. But his game's completely different. His mindset's completely different. Everything's different. It's another person. And so I think depend of the person. I think some guys, for example, like Pato, he was a guy that was already winning everything, and then he went to Dream Art. He was winning everything already as a black belt. And then he went to UJ, he just kept winning. Nothing changed. I think some guys you're gonna see if they change something on them or not. So like, I feel that like, maybe a guy can go to a gym as a black belt and be a product of that gym, like Giancarlo is to New Wave, or a guy can go to a gym as a purple belt or even blue belt and not actually be a product of that gym. That guy would be good anyway. The guy would be a champion anyway. So I think like each person, each case, we need to look with different eyes.
Yeah, I think that's Andre. What's the really heavy guy that recently went to AOJ and he hasn't had the results that so many people have? Gutenberg, right? So that's a great example.
Like he won. Like don't get us wrong. Like he won Europeans, the absolute. He won Pan Ams, the absolute. He won Brazilian Nationals, the absolute already. But he's not actually performing the way we expect Gutenberg to perform. Because we all know he's a beast. He's so good. He used to be the only one who was able to beat Mergali on the color belt. And even on the black belt, he already beat Mergali in IBJJF Star, where he had the finals against Preguiça, 2021, 22. So it's like he's a guy who's supposed to go to the tournament and completely dominate. Like Eric Muniz does, like Preguiça used to do, Kainan, Mergali. And he's been having, even winning, he's been having a really tough time. At Pan Am, for example, he lost his second round to a black belt, Lucas Montalvão, that used to be his student. And this is not something we was expecting from Gutenberg at the moment.
And I don't want to get too far off topic, but you've mentioned Preguiça multiple times. You mentioned Mergali multiple times. And when you say those names, it kind of draws in the name of, to my mind, Mika Galvão. So when you have, Felipe Preguiça Pena, you have Marigali, you have Mika Galvão, they've all kind of said in their own way that they're kind of sitting out the worlds, and there seems to be something about monetary compensation, something like that. But in my mind, I think it's really fair to say that those three names are three of the most prolific, biggest names in our sport. But you make your living from jiu-jitsu. You're a professional jiu-jitsu guy. You teach, you compete. Your whole world is about jiu-jitsu. So do you agree with them, or does it kind of hurt your heart that they're not at the Worlds? Because I fully understand and can support both points of view, but as a fan, I wish that they would be there. Like, who would not want to see Marigali out under the lights of the Pyramid this weekend?
I feel the same way you feel. Exactly the same vision you have about the situation. I can understand their side, but before, when we had Buchecha against Rodolfo on the absolute finals every year, we knew we would go to wars and we would see this fight.
Roger Jacaré, Roger Zanji, it's just. I think these are the moments that build jiu-jitsu.
Exactly, the moments that stays for history, right? Because a lot of times these guys competing mainstream event, for example, who is number one or BJ start, but the people don't actually remember. A lot of people don't even know that Kainan already fought Marigali, for example. That was supposed to be one of the biggest no-gi matches. Yeah. And no one don't even know.
And one thing I would say is, and I know this factually, you know this factually, and I know a lot of the community doesn't, and it's not a criticism of them, but I do think the question of how much money is enough is an interesting one, because we both know Marigali, Mika Galvão, and Preguiça, none of them are hurting for money. They could all fight this weekend, build their legacy further, give their fans a show, and I don't think it's going to impact their pocketbook at all, because they all do very, very well. And it's a tough pill for me to swallow, but I don't want to criticize anybody, but I did want to kind of let my feelings be known. So to wrap up the black belt light, who do you got? One name.
I go with Janaína.
Awesome. So we are going to go over to the middle. And in this division, we have Talita from Fratris. We have one of Lloyd Irvin's black belts, Vanessa
Griffin.
Yeah, and then we have Elizabeth Clay. She's always a huge name in the sport, who's kind of always been right there, but not quite at the black belt in the gi. So if you had to pick somebody, who would it be?
That's a tough division. It's two brackets, right? I would say Elizabeth Clay is is there to get this gold. She had a kid, I think, at the end of last year or something like that. I saw her at No-Gi Worlds carrying the just born baby, and that was crazy. And she won actually the No-Gi Worlds, and she becoming in a really good moment of her career. Talita would be a strong one to get this gold, but she had a really, really bad injury on her knee, so she's coming back. Brazilian Nationals was her first tournament back. Vanessa Griffin's always there, very tough. Larissa Martins, Rebecca, you actually got to see her training at Gordo's a little bit, right?
Yeah, I was at a gym in Rio. The one thing I would say about Rebecca was she was there, she was training with my son, Renzo. And I will say this, I have seen a ton of women, as you know, at every belt level, white through black, train. And this woman, chick, whatever, she moves well. She's aggressive. She's impressive. And if you remember, we were at Brasileiros, and I said, do you know anyone that knows her? Because that's the type of girl I would invite to Orlando to come and train with my daughter. I thought she moved super well. She was super impressive. And, Did she fight black last year? I think third, maybe.
I'm not sure if she fought black or
because
brown.
I think she won brown, but she's a
I think she fought black last year.
Yeah, she's super impressive, and she'd be the dark horse I rooted for because obviously I know my son's level. He's 230 pounds. She's small compared to Enzo, and it was super just impressive to watch her throw caution to the wind and go after him. It was awesome.
She's very, very aggressive. She's a underdog that I think we should keep our eyes, because she's a very tough girl. Actually, Larissa Martins is someone that we should be watching as well. I think she will come strong. A lot of people don't know her on the mainstream, but she actually can come with this gold as well.
Okay, so final prediction, if you had to pick one?
I would go with Larissa Martins for this one. Larissa Martins.
So I'm gonna pick the dark horse. I hope Rebecca can pull it off. Like I said, as a black belt for over 20 years, it was really awesome to see her train, and I would. That's my dark horse pick for the ladies.
I go with the dark horse as well.
Okay, so we are medium heavy. Now this is, an interesting division. We have Tamara, last year's champion. Who do you think has a chance against her?
That's a tough division. We have Tamara, we have Ingrid Alves, very, very good.
She's always tough. She came and stayed in Orlando for a week.
She's very tough. I'm not sure who is Maria Carolina from AOJ. Can I see her second name? Maria Carolina. I'm not sure who is her. She's the number 2 seated on the bracket, but I'm sure from AOJ she will be very tough as well. We have Giovanna Carneiro as very good closet guard. Aurelie Verne is very, very tough as well. That's gonna be a interesting division. Kawane Ramos from Fight Sports also coming strong. Already won double gold as a brown belt. That's a tough division. Oh my gosh. If I had to guess on this division, that's a tough one. I think I would go with, to don't keep with Tamara, let's give a new champion. I would go with Giovanna Carneiro from Frates. She's coming strong. She's been winning a lot in Brazil. And I think she's someone to keep our eyes open. The seeded, don't give her a good number. She's number 9 on the ranking, but this don't mean anything. I think she can come. And
I think it's interesting because if she, as the second Fratres athlete, what happens in a closeout scenario?
Ooh.
Do they give it to the defending or do they give it to the new one?
To be honest, depending of who get to the finals, they may fight. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Times are changing. So we're going to go to heavy. So I think this is a super interesting division, primarily because we have so many defending champions. I think, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think we would both agree that, our sentimental pick would be Larissa Diaz.
For sure.
She's our fellow Orlando girl. What's up, Larissa? Best of luck.
What's up, Larissa?
But one thing that I think is, and I may be wrong, but I've seen so many fights with Yara and Gabby. Has Yara dieted down to this division to avoid, Porfirio and Gabby? And if that's the case, she is a big, tough woman.
And she just came from a huge victory at Brazilian Nationals. She won the division over there. But this is such, I think from all the division we saw, this one looks to me one of the toughest ones, because we have Tamiris, who won last year, Melissa Cueto, we have Larissa Diaz, Yara Soares, Isadora Cristina, Anabel Lopes. Man, that will be a banger. That will be crazy. That would be crazy.
And I think one thing that's, interesting when we look at the divisions, what I like to see personally, as a bigger guy, as an ultra for sure, with the bigger girls, the jiu-jitsu is getting better and better and better. And I mean the heavies and the super heavies of this generation, I think, because I don't think there's any doubt, and I don't think it's wrong to say the best woman to ever do jiu-jitsu in the kimono for me is Gabi Bisagna, for sure.
Yes, for sure.
Like, I don't even think it's debatable, personally. And that's a strong statement. But so here, if you had to pick one,
I want to stay with Larissa. She's been competing not only because she's our friend, but she been a good role of competing. She's been competing every single Open, almost every weekend. You see her, Miami Open, Orlando Open, Atlanta Open, Chicago Open. She'll be winning double gold after double gold after double gold. And I feel on my own experience, on my personal experience, that when you have a competition rhythm, that you always there on the same mats, with the same referees, you always there, you get used to, and you get like, it's normal for you to get, when you get to the big stage, you're gonna see the exactly same people you see every weekend. You're gonna be on the same mats you always stepping every weekend. So I feel this counts a lot. And her and Anderson, that we're gonna talk later on the men's division, will have this advantage against a lot of the people in their division.
And the one thing I would say, guys, if you are in my ecosystem, Larissa Diaz is going to be up in March of 2026 at one of my affiliates doing a women's weekend. The women out west in Western Canada, they're a great crew. They're going to put on a great weekend under the jiu-jitsu tutelage of Larissa Diaz. That's something I was very, very proud to put together for my women's team, and as well to give such an outstanding person. Forget the jiu-jitsu. Such an outstanding person like Larissa to give that opportunity. That's March 2026, guys. You can always reach out to me if you're a lady and you'd like to get on the mat with a world champion. So now we're going to go over to the ultra, which I think is madness, because at the end of the day, we're going to have, a redo of Brasileiros. And, obviously, Porfirio is back from the suspension.
Yes.
And my one disappointment is, as a jiu-jitsu fan, nobody can appreciate winning as much as me. But what is your thought on, Porfirio's strategy? And I might be asking the wrong guy because you play the strategy game to a whole other level. But, she scored early with Gabi, and then she was very lay and pray in that, like, double under situation. And Gabi almost scored at the very end. But what a treat it would be, and I don't necessarily think it's going to happen, but if they both went out on the mat, Andre, and just let the jiu-jitsu go and said, we're going to put a show, who do you think would win?
I think Gabi would win, having consideration their fight history. Only on that week, they had fought 3 times. They fought at the BJJ Stars the week before, and they fought in the Absolute from Brasileiros, and Gabi won both of the mats. So I feel Tayane just put on her mind, this time I don't actually want to exchange jiu-jitsu. The girl is actually amazing, so I'm just going to fight to win. And even fighting to win, she had a big chance to lose as well. And if the referees was a little bit more lenient, they may give her more penalties and she could lose.
Yeah.
So if I had to gather towards, I think Gabi gonna come with the double gold once again.
I absolutely agree. And it's just like, again, there's the coach's perspective, which I understand, and there's the fan perspective. And I like Gabi because for me, she's a female Hodger. She's like, let's go, let's fight. And, that's what I would like to see from Porfirio. But fighting a monster like Gabi, I understand. So we're going to bounce over here and we're going to get into the men. And, obviously 22 years on, I'm just now when I said we're going to get to the men, I got goosebumps because it's absolutely crazy. And we will start at the Rooster. And, it's unfortunate because a lot of these guys at Rooster, they're not as well known. And I don't think that there's any doubt in my mind, really, that the final is almost certainly going to be Taliesin versus the GF team guy. Is it Carlos Alberto? Who is the new Melky guy?
The new male guy is Yuri Hendricks. He actually used to train at Sisters with us till his black belt. He's a Brazilian national champion, European black belt champion, world pro champion. And in my opinion, he also has a big chance of beat Carlos Alberto, for sure, and May Tyson, because he knows Tyson very well. They used to train together, and also with me. I used to be on this team as well. And I think he has a chance to come up with this gold. Of course, Tyson and Bebeto are the favorites, but...
I got to ask, Tallis an AOJ product?
No. No AOJ product.
Yeah, no, I get it. He was a Cicero guy. He lives in Byron Bay. He lives in Australia full time.
Yeah.
I get he comes in, he'll do a little camp, but I just had to ask.
And if you remember last year, Tyson lost on his first round.
Yes.
To Andrew Soares. That unfortunately don't gonna be on the event this year for some reasons that I don't know. But that's a tough division. We also have Rodinei Barbosa that got second couple times. I think 2 or 3 times. Man, that's a tough division. Yuri Silva got second on Brasileiros.
If you could, just from an athlete's point of view, give me a minute on your thoughts. Because, Taliesin lives in Australia.
Yeah.
And he doesn't live in Brisbane. He doesn't live in Melbourne. I have been to Byron Bay. Like, it's in the middle of nowhere. Thor lives there, like the actor, the Hemsworth guy, but like it's a little town. So if he's not making the guys to train with, he's got no one to train with. How hard do you think it is to keep the rhythm in that situation?
I feel for Taliesin. First, Taliesin, he have 2 guys there that used to be good black belts from Brazil as well that moved to Australia, not to train with him or anything, just as a coincidence. Junior Crispin. And have another guy, I forgot his name, and they are actually Taliesin's weight. They rooster and light feather just like Taliesin. So from the beginning, he had these 2 guys to train with him. Even when the gym was on the beginning. But I'm sure with his name, when he opened the gym, a lot of guys that used to train in other gyms around came to train with him. Maybe not high-level guys, but guys who had at least a minimum understanding of Jiu-Jitsu. And because he's a small guy, I'm sure it's easier for him to find tough training than, for example, if, I don't know, Gutenberg moved to Byron Bay. Then I think it would be harder for him because he's big and strong, or Meregali, whatever. Then because he's small, I think like a middleweight purple belt with a good level could give him a hard time. Medium heavyweight brown belt, that's not even a competitor, but knows about Jiu-Jitsu, could give him a hard time. So I feel he could make his camp kind of easier than, for example, Roger. Roger is a good example of like, man, how this guy found training in London when he moved there. He don't actually have training. He had to figure out a way to be able to improve his jiu-jitsu and keep himself sharp. But I think for Taliesin was kind of course, was not easy, because never easy, but was easier to find a way to train the best way possible.
Yeah, I think in the rare instances of Hodger, I just think the guy's a unicorn.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, there's always those guys, right? The Hoffas, the Hodgers, the Marcellos. These guys are not even great. They're just unicorns. So, if you had to pick one guy, if you had to bet the house,
I would go with Taliesin. He looks strong. He looks ready for this one. I've been watching his stories and be following him on social media, and this time he looks light. He looks inspired. He looks like he has the light on him.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's absolutely fair. So I mean, here, is it I mean, for me,
that's a tough one.
This, I believe, should be a rematch, and I'm biased, but of the absolutely, and this is a bold statement, most exciting fight at ADCC.
I agree.
What do you think?
I agree. This fight gonna be crazy. If no gi was already that crazy, we're talking about, of course, Diego Pato against Diogo Baby Shark. And man, always when these guys fights, are always like fireworks coming off the fight. And they actually fought last year, right? I'm pretty sure they fought on the same finals.
You know what?
Last year or the year before.
Jiu-Jitsu is leaking out of my ears right now. I'm not sure. And whenever those names are said, I just cannot believe the beating Baby Shark took at ADCC and came back with that Katagatame.
No,
I literally flew out of my seat.
And also on the same time, it's hard for me to guess against Pato, because Pato is such a freak of nature. This guy, especially in the gi.
Former teammate,
but Diogo too. But I actually had a podcast. I have an episode with Diogo, and Diogo is amazing, man. Great jiu-jitsu, very, very good strategist. But Pato, I don't know. This guy has something different. This guy in the gi especially is a beast.
I will say, on a sentimental and emotional level for me, shout out to my man Malachi. He did have an absolutely massive upset 2 years ago at Euros when he was able to upset Pato. I'm hoping that wasn't a once in a lifetime, but I agree with you in the strongest way. Pato is a freak, and, he could eventually become the unicorn.
Yes, I agree.
So
and we also have some other great guys here. Leonardo Mario that came to Orlando with us a couple years ago.
Leo was in Orlando for an extended time. Shout out to Leo. I know he's going to be up at one of my affiliate gyms in Canada doing a seminar with Josh Budu, his Brazilian brother. But I definitely... Leo's tough, but these guys are just they're just so tough. But the one thing I would like to extend to Leonardo Mario is congratulations on your visa. I think it's an absolute tragedy that an athlete of your level has to go through the ringer. You're not going to meet a man who became an American, later in life. And who's more patriotic and a more devout American than me. I'm so proud to be American. But for these guys in Brazil that are being arbitrarily denied their visa, we need to fix that process. Leonardo Mario is a serious, legitimate contender at black belt. And if it is one thing I would like to see the USCIS and the embassies get better, we can't let these guys that are so gifted in jiu-jitsu languish outside the U.S. We have to, whether we change the visa and have them more limited entry, these guys should not be missing Worlds and Pan Ams. It's a tragedy. And, as a community, I know there's a lot of great attorneys out there in the jiu-jitsu space, whether it be RC in Miami or Wilner here in Southern California. We got to get these guys to these tournaments. What do you think, Andre?
I agree 100%. Because Leonardo, for example, he fought his first Worlds at Blue Belt, I think back in 2018. And then he had his visa denied after that, and he couldn't compete anymore in US. So, he lost many, many years of Pan Ams and Worlds. And this is actually his first tournament back after so many years.
And I will say that's a shame.
That's a shame.
So I think we're in agreement. It's Pato's to lose, and we are going to go on to the feather. So I think at feather, I don't know if you saw the news on Instagram.
I saw about Isaac Dordeling.
Yeah, hanging it up.
I saw that.
You know how I was just saying I'm a proud American?
Mm-hmm.
Sad to see Isaac go. I think he was a great representation for jiu-jitsu. I'll never forget when he won that world title. I'm going to ask the question everyone's thinking. I know there's a lot of great guys, but even my son, who's a massive jiu-jitsu fan and a practitioner himself, if you had to bet in a heads-up match, Mayram or Cole?
Mayram, all day. Mayram is one of the toughest guys, counting all weights, that I ever trained with, that I ever been in the mats with. This guy is just a freak of nature.
Let me ask you something, because Mayram, one of the reasons I have an unparalleled level of respect for Mayram is because he will do the absolute, and not
He will.
randomly. He'll do it at the Worlds. He'll do it at Brazilian Nationals.
You don't care.
So let me ask you. One thing I did want to... I'm going to digress a little bit. I think there's a couple honorable mentions at the women's brown belt that I wanted to discuss that are fighting tomorrow.
Right.
But I think we can all agree Helena Krevar is a huge name in jiu-jitsu.
For sure.
And then I think for me right now, out of the black belt division, besides maybe Ashley Funegra who won, I think the biggest name in female jiu-jitsu is without a doubt, in my opinion, Sarah Galvan.
Oh, yeah.
So let me ask you, because your entire career have been a quote-unquote absolute guy. You're usually in the absolute. You want to be in the absolute. What do you think of these athletes that, and I'll use the Funegras because they're unbelievable.
Yes.
They will do the absolute at juvenile, blue, purple. At brown, they're no longer in the absolute. Mm-hmm. We've seen Sarah Galvan double grand slam, absolute. Yeah. Now she's sitting absolutes out of the brown belt. I think we know why. Mm-hmm. But what do you think of the athletes that once they get to a certain level, they start opting out of the absolutes? Do you think that's the athlete or do you think it's the coach?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if it's because of when they get to the brown, black belts, now leg locks are allowed and they may be scared of a lighter student may get hurt in the absolute. I'm not sure. It's hard for me to give you these questions, but I think that everything is possible. Like after we saw Paulo Miao winning the brown belt absolute back in 2013, beating Keenan Cornelius in the finals, Jackson Souza in the semifinals. It's so impressive to see what he did and was so beautiful, his story after that. And I just love to watch the small guys. Like I remember last year, Pato fought Penam's absolute and was great to see him. Andy Murasaki as well. May Hunt, who was beating Roberto Gimenez, beating Angelo Claiborne, now big guy, strong. So I don't actually know the reason why. Like, I don't know why.
Do you think it's possible that some of the big name coaches out there keep their better athletes out of the absolute because they're concerned about protecting the brand of their gym or their athlete?
That's possible, but I think if you see, for example, if you go to the light featherweight bracket, to the featherweight bracket, let's give an example. We're going to see a bunch of names, right? But how many of the guys that are not from a big team who has a famous coach or something like that are in the absolute? If you look the absolute bracket, you're never going to see featherweight. Like, doesn't matter if he's from a small gym from Manaus or if he's a gym from Abu Dhabi. The guys don't get inside the absolute. I think probably in the black belt they're afraid to get hurt or something like that.
Because I do think, though, we always talk about the progression of jiu-jitsu. And there's no doubt, I think, that, the level of jiu-jitsu is higher now than it was 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you, when I was in Brazil, 4, 5, and 6, the last 3 years, it was at the Tijuca Tennis Club. Mm-hmm. Extremely common. Marcelo Garcia, Ted Day, a much lighter André Galvan. They're fighting in the absolute.
But, like, even these guys, there was, like, middleweight and up, right?
Yeah.
But, like, middleweights, we still see in the absolute. For example, Justin Gums last year fought medium heavy. But, actually, even middleweights is being hard to see nowadays, right?
Because, who's the king of the middleweights?
Tainan, that is now fighting the absolute. And then we have the podium. Who was the podium last year to middleweight? Tainan got DQ.
Yeah, Tainan got DQ'd.
The finals was Francisco Lô that don't go to the absolute.
Yeah, I don't even remember, but
I think Jackson Nagai,
and then the year before, the guy that got his foot hurt against Bergini, a very popular guy.
Jansen.
Yeah, Jansen. But we've seen Jansen in the absolute.
But being a medium heavyweight, not being a middleweight. Yeah. This is a change, but makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So I would love to see, for example, Alex Sodré is a guy that I grew up watching him competing absolutes and beating big guys. And nowadays on the black belt, I never seen him competing.
So is it fair to say you're calling Mayram for this division?
Man, I go with Mayram. For me, it's almost impossible to guess against Mayram. But if Kenneth or Diego Sodré or even Fabrice André get the gold, don't gonna surprise me as well.
All right, going over to we
Light,
gotta go.
I think
We gotta
light
go to
first.
light. Okay, so at lightweight, well, I think I believe there's we've got Pedro Maia. We've got all these tough guys. Espen is always a freak. This is tough because I think most people would agree Elijah is having a banner year. I'm always proud. I usually have Elijah at my place once a year. He was there teaching with you this year. I think he's shocked everyone at Brazilian Nationals and BJJ Stars.
Yeah.
But man, Andy's consistent.
To be honest, that's the first division. Of course, the other divisions, I saw Pato, I saw Meihan, but I'm still like, oh, maybe. But I don't know why. But looking to this division and looking Andy, Thomas, Murasaki there, man, I feel we already have the champion. If I had to guess, I would guess my house, I would guess anything. If he don't get hurt or anything like that, I bet anything in Andy. I'm sure he's gonna get this gold. And I would love to see a finals, him against Elijah, or even him against Robinho. That's a very close friend of mine, just won Pan Ams, won Nogi Worlds last year. But Andy's, it's his time. It's a guy who has 3 silvers in 3 different divisions. He has a lightweight silver medal at Worlds, black belt, middleweight, and medium heavy silver medal. So.
And one thing I would say, guys, is as a father, for those of you that don't know, I have 6 kids. I get questioned a lot because, as you know, I travel a lot. My kid is in these gyms, and one of the best judgments for me, that's always profound, is how does somebody treat your kid? And Andy Murasaki is a gentleman. He's very welcoming. I've been at Atos a number of times with my son in class. Andy's teaching. Andy'll, talk to my son, help him, and he's trained with my son. And he's a real gentleman, and he's always been a bridesmaid, never a bride. That's the saying. So I'm hoping, I'm wishing him the best. There is one guy in this division that I'd like to give a special mention to. He's my top student, and that is Ethan Major. And the only thing I would say is Ethan would have to fight Andy in the second round. Ooh. And how awful of a matchup is that?
They're gonna be insane because Ethan also been growing a lot. I met Ethan 2018 when he came to stay, I think 1 or 2 months with us. He was a gray belt, a little kid.
Yeah.
And nowadays to see him competing on the highest level and like so fearless and so hungry to win, and I'm sure his time will come. Maybe Saturday, we never know. Maybe Sunday, actually, we never know. And I believe he can make it. But if not Sunday, at sometime soon this will come because he's been training like crazy. And
he has the best thing on his side, and that's age and time.
That's true. I agree 1,000%.
Okay, so I think we're in agreement with Murasaki on that. Now we're going to go up to middle. So, I mean, here's the question. Is it a waste of time to even talk about?
I think so, to be honest.
So, yeah, it's
last year, we had Tainan being the Q. That hopefully will not happen. And 2023... we had him lost in an upset. Nowadays, it's easy to say, okay, Jansen. But 2023, right? 2023, no one knew who was Jansen. He lost. He beat
but, that was on the finals, and I think Jansen had the formula for Tainan. I think Tainan is one of those guys that is so good.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people wish against him because he's so good. But I don't think there is anything wrong with saying it's his to lose.
No, it's his division. I think maybe the only guy who could give him a really, really hard match and maybe be able to beat him is Ronaldo Jr. That's coming back to middle after a while competing at medium heavyweight. He's a guy who always had really tough fights. against Tainan.
All right, so I think we're in agreement that it is probably Tynan's division to lose, and we will go over to medium heavy, which is, I think, always an interesting division. Again, I don't know if you're in agreement with me, but you know him pretty well. Jansen's obviously tough, but, is it Bergini's division?
It's Bergina division, but I don't remember if it was their last matches or if their last match was at Worlds. But Jansen been having a lot of good results against Gustavo. I would say on the last 3 matches, Jansen won 2 or something like that. This division, we also have guys like I think the Veterasi brothers are not coming. They've been coming a really good role, and they close out as Europeans. They had a really good results at Brazilian Nationals, but I think they had problems with the visa, with the same situation we spoke before. We have Matias Luna, Paulo Merlin, but I think...
How shocking would it be if somebody won and it wasn't Berginia or Jensen?
Very, very, very shocking.
Yeah. So I'm going to give the nod to Berginia again. I think he's a gentleman. Renzo, my son, has been privileged to do multiple privates with him. And, I'll be pulling for Berginia on Sunday afternoon.
If I had to guess, I would go with Jansen for this one.
Awesome. Now, going over to heavy. So, kind of, crazy division. We've got Adam, who, the one thing I find is everyone's like, oh, Adam's going to win again. But, Adam's older, and he won his first world title last year. He obviously looked great in Brazil. Could he do it again? You would think, but, Pedro, you've got, Hidezuki.
Leonardo Silveira from Mario Reis, Alliance Mario Reis, that beat Pedro at Brazilian Nationals and had a really good fight against Adam at Brasileiros Finals.
Got to give a shout out to Leandro from Fratris, who's been with us the last few months in Orlando. But at the end of the day, I got to spend a week in the room with Pedro Machado when I was in Rio before Brasileiros. If I had a gun to my head, I'd probably pick Adam, but I'm hoping Pedro wins.
I think Pedro deserves 2 wins because he's a guy who won 2021 Worlds as a brown belt weight and absolute, and then on his first year as a black belt 2022 he got second, and then 2023 2024 he didn't have the results he was expecting, but he's a guy who works very, very hard, and I feel he can beat Adam if his mind's on the right place.
He has beat him.
He has beat twice with 2 on bars.
Yeah.
And he had a close match against Adam at the last Pan Ams, right? They fought.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think it's 2-2 right now.
I think it's 2-2. And also, at Brasileiros, he lost to Leonardo Silveira, but I think I would have to guess I would go with Pedro Machado as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna be pulling for Pedro. Pedro's also good buddies with Eduardo Hoke, who we're gonna give an honorable mention to at lightweight with Ethan Major as well. But these guys, Pedro Maya first round for Eduardo, disaster. Tough fight.
Tough fight.
But let's go with Pedro Machado at the heavyweight division. Now we're going over to super, and at super, we've got, Muniz. I see the smile on your face. You're already thinking that, right? The number 2 seed, Nolan Patrick from Bray Jiu-Jitsu.
Nolan Stewart, that is a kid that is a very young kid. I'm pretty sure he's 20, 21. And it's very interesting. His coach, Dan Lukerhart, used to host us back in 2016 when we used to come to Pan Ams, all the Cicero Costa team. And since there, I knew it. He was such a nerd in Jiu-Jitsu, and he always had on his mind that he would build a black belt world champion from scratch. And he had Nolan, back in the day, he was a white belt or like a green belt, something like this, just a little kid who don't even used to compete as much. And he always been telling us that I'm gonna make a black belt world champion from scratch. I'm gonna make a black belt world champion from scratch. And Nolan came on the belts, winning some, losing some. And since this kid got to the black belt level, this kid been having crazy results. This year, he lost Europeans a very close match to Liberati, but he won Pan Ams at super heavyweight and got second in a really close match against Eric Muniz at Brasileiros. Of course, was a close match against Eric Muniz, you know. But he did really good against Eric, being submitted just on the last minute in a 0-0 the whole match. So I think like he has a big chance. And looking at the bracket as well, I think he has a big chance to get to the finals against Eric. But it's hard to give my guess against Eric because Eric is just being like surfing in every single division he's getting. Doesn't matter the weight, doesn't matter against who.
So let me ask you.
Besides Murigali.
How good could Liberace be if he had the tournament of a lifetime?
If he had the tournament of the lifetime, I think he could beat Eric because I already saw he beating Eric in the color belts. Of course, lost much more times than he beat, but he already did, and I saw that. And he used to train with Eric Muniz a lot. Eric Muniz now is representing his own team, Soldiers, that he opened up with Meihan and Yatan and his brothers. But like last year, for example, Eric was a Fratres, and they used to train together every day. So when you train with someone every single day for years, you know the down points of this person, you know the good points of this person. So if you have someone on this bracket that has a big chance to beat Eric, would be for sure Liberati.
Do you think it's fair to say that Liberati is one of the more underrated black belts out there?
Oh yeah, I think a lot of because his personality too. He's more a low profile guy, don't talk much, and I don't think he speak English, so especially here in US gonna be hard to the people to actually know him. But he's a beast. This guy is such a great jiu-jitsu fighter.
So we go to the ultra heavy division, and
ooh,
what do you think? You know, obviously we got Gutenberg, we've got
Safe agent. Safe, what happened? Last year we had the world finals between Yatan Bueno and Pedro Alex from GF team. But both ended up filing on the drug test to USADA, so both lost the world title. So the world title went to the third place, who lost to the champion. That in this case was Saif. And man, Saif is a guy who I've been following him since Purple Belt. He's huge. For who don't know, he is a really big guy who fought against Mikey Musumas a couple years ago. Who had this crazy fight, the small guy against the enormous guy. So he's always a really tough match, of course, because of his size and of course the jiu-jitsu he has. We have Gutenberg that I think is a favor on this division, but Gutenberg is different than Tainan or Mika or Angie, for example, in this tournament. Like, I see Gutenberg as the favorite, but it's hard for me to completely get my house on him, you know, because sometimes he has these fall downs, like at Panams that he lost to Lucas Montalvão, that used to be his student at GF team. And so it's hard for me to give my 100% credit to Gutenberg, but if I would have to guess, I would guess in Gutenberg, but I'm not pretty sure.
Could Scooby do it?
Scooby could be him, even Cantareira, Luis Fernando could be him.
And what do you think of Anderson being rated 7?
Anderson Muniz?
Yeah.
He is also a current world champion, right? He won last year, closing out with Eric on the finals. And I have no idea why he is ranked 7. I don't know if he don't have enough points. Because
I just think when I'm looking at some of these names ahead of him, I don't agree with him being at 7.
Yeah, I don't agree as well. But to be honest, the names that are ahead of him, all could be him, could lose to him. It's very close.
And a very big ultra at 17 people.
Oh yeah, and we have the less seated. We have Tractor there. That is never someone to don't give a shout out to.
So saving the best for last, Andre. Women's absolute. Is anyone going to take it from the queen?
I will stick with Gabi Peçanha. I stay with her. And on the males division, I don't know you, but I'm going to stay with Eric Muniz once again.
I'm going to agree with you. I think, I don't want to offend anybody out there, but I think a lot of the Brazilians need to up the language game, because I personally think Gabi Peçanha could be a millionaire if she could speak fluent English.
I'm sure about it.
And to see a woman do jiu-jitsu like her, I wish that for her. And I agree with you about Muniz. I don't think, he has the personality of a Buchecha, or I don't think he has the appeal of a Hidalgo. I think he's a pretty low profile, like undercover brother. And I believe it's better for our sport if we have that prolific absolute champion.
I agree.
But I don't see anybody beating him. And
I don't see. Maybe if Tainan gets in the absolute, surprise us or something like that. But
I say Guy does not let that happen in a million years. But I'll tell you, if you had a guy like Tainan that could win the absolute,
yes, I think
that's
Tainan could have a chance.
That's going to be overwhelmingly good for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
But besides him, like maybe Jansen, I don't know, but it's hard for me to see someone without Vitor Hugo, without Mergali, without Kainan. It's hard to see someone. Preguiça. It's hard to see someone that maybe Gutenberg, but I don't know.
I agree. Well, guys, that's we're gonna put a pin in it. That is the end of our first podcast here at the Jiu Jitsu Crucible podcast. Andre, I would like to really thank you for joining me and sharing your knowledge, and I'm excited to have a great weekend inside the Walter Pyramid with you.
No, it was a pleasure. Thanks again for the opportunity, Pat, to be here on the first episode, and I'm hoping that we can do this again once the podcast starts to be with video as well. And thanks so much that is listening, and I'm very excited for this week. I'm gonna